There's no place like the Cube.
Hey, I'm Darren.
And I'm Esther, and this is Second Sunday, a podcast about Black queer people finding, keeping, and sometimes losing faith.
You set up a meeting on where the church is going to go in terms of gay. Everybody who's been a member of the church in the last 400 years shows up. So the place was just packed with people. They were swinging from the chandeliers. It was just crazy. So I had a packed house to tell them, I am gay. I've always been gay. I've been trying to tell the world all these years I'm gay. And the only thing I regret is that I haven't done it sooner.
That was Reverend Benjamin Reynolds. And among many things, he is both a pastor and gay, because this is Second Sunday, and that's what we're here to talk about. And I was really drawn to his story, not really because these seem like two conflicting identities or anything like that. I was drawn to it because we all know that there are gay people in the church, right?
Right. You got the choir directors and the preachers and the armor bearers and the adjutants.
Some of those words you said, I don't even know what some of that stuff means, but I know that some of them were, in fact, gay people. But, you know, with that, it's like everybody just pretends like they don't know that these people are gay. And for the most part, everybody's cool with it as long as you're not too obvious, as long as you don't say, I'm gay. And once you do say that, then all of a sudden what was okay today is not okay tomorrow. And I can kind of relate to that because that's how high school was for me. High school was a positive experience overall, but even though I was, you know, the captain of the soccer team and the academic decathlon team and doing debate and poetry and all of the overachieving oldest child things that you would do, I also had a girlfriend. And even though we weren't like secretive about it, we weren't obvious about, like, I wasn't comfortable being out and like out, you know the way that kids are out now. I feel like that makes me sound really old. But anyway, we weren't super out.
And it's too much for you to expect to have to put all your stuff on Front Street. Like, straight people don't have to come out.
Exactly. And being a private person, I just didn't even really know who I'm supposed to tell, what I'm supposed to do. So I was just like, all right, cool. I got a girlfriend and it's not really anybody's business. But just our presence forced people to kind of confront the fact that we were gay. It did definitely feel like I was living this open secret. And once we broke up, then people were very vocal about her new relationship, which was with a guy. And I was like, oh, you guys were just like purposefully not seeing us before. And now that she's dating someone else, you're letting me know that I too should find a boyfriend.
It's the shade for me.
It really is. So for this episode, I really wanted to talk to someone else who knows what it's like to live an open secret. I mean, a lot of gay people can relate to that, but Reverend Benjamin Reynolds really did it in a way that I don't know anybody else who can relate to, because he was living an open secret as the pastor of a pretty large church. And then he had to have a conversation about it with like 400 people.
It's 2011 and the Arab Spring is raging. A lesbian activist in Syria starts a blog. She names it Gay Girl in Damascus.
Am I crazy? Maybe.
As her profile grows, so does the danger.
The object of the email was, please read this while sitting down.
It's like a genie came out of the bottle and you can't put it back.
Gay Girl Gone. Available now.
Hey friends, we're having a live event with PRX.
And we want you to join us virtually.
The PRX Big Questions Project presents
Making It, a night of big questions.
It's Tuesday, June 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Click the link in the show notes to register today. Okay, so let me set it up for you for a second. Reverend Benjamin Reynolds is a theologian, teacher, minister, activist, and he's been doing community and faith-based work for almost 40 years. So he grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which I didn't even know that there were Black people over there, but apparently there are. And his family was a religious family of faithful church members and leaders.
I remember at 13, just this burning desire to preach. And we were at dinner one night, and I asked my parents if I could be excused, and I got up and went and called the pastor and told him, I think I want to preach. I believe I've been called to preach. And that sort of opened the door to being 14 and being in the pulpit preaching. I'm very fortunate to have a recording of that sermon, and it's now so hilarious. Not that the words were so hilarious, but I didn't know what I was saying. I mean, I hadn't lived that, and my voice was so high pitched. So it's just kind of funny to listen to. But I think that's a call that's on my life, and I carry it everywhere I go.
So he was sure about his calling, but he's also gay, and he wasn't really sure how he could be a Christian and a gay man, let alone a pastor and a gay man.
There was a time in my life when I prayed, God, take the gay away. Give me a pill that I can just take and be done with it. I even got married to a woman and lived that miserable life, not only for myself, but also for her.
In 1999, Reverend Reynolds was asked by the congregation of his childhood church to be their pastor. Then he decided that he needed to go to seminary. But first, he and his wife separated. Darren, we've had a lot of conversations in creating this podcast, and I feel like there's always a point in our conversations with people where they're like, and then I went to seminary. And I'm just trying to find out, like, what is happening to people in seminary that they are coming back and, like, basically raising hell and flipping tables and doing all sorts of things that is so removed from what they thought church was and the Bible was beforehand. Like, what is going on in seminary?
In seminary, you get this deep dive into scripture, into history, into context. You get, for the first time, it's where you often meet perspectives and ways of looking at the Bible and ways of looking at faith that you don't get in your church, because everybody in your church pretty much thinks like you and comes from the same background. But in seminary, oh no, it's a whole different ball game.
I thought I had preached all of the sermons I could possibly preach, and I just felt like I needed to go to seminary. But I also thought when I would go to seminary, I probably would teach them something. And I arrived at seminary, and it was it was less than 3 hours in, and I was humbled by the experience.
It wasn't even 6 weeks into seminary when I began to understand that I could be Black, Christian, preacher, and gay.
Oh, I feel that so much. I remember in college when I was starting to have my own similar experience of getting collegiate level Bible classes and finding out that what the pastor said was not actually accurate. Where you're sitting there and you're looking at the Greek and the Hebrew and you're finding out about these traditions that don't get translated into our modern context. And so you really start seeing, oh, maybe it is different, right? Maybe it doesn't have to be the way it was said.
Seminary sounds like this utopia, like summer camp. And then eventually it has to come to an end. And, the club is over. They played the last song. They played Suavemente and all the lights come on. And you have to look at the person that you looked at under those lights and be like, can I face this reality?
I started wrestling with how in the world am I, at the time, pastoring this major church in Colorado Springs, going to be able to go to them and tell them, hey, y'all, I'm gay.
And so he does what a lot of people would do. He just doesn't tell them. So he went back and continued to pastor his home church with all this new seminary information in his head.
Yeah.
And he is doing things to integrate what he's learned in seminary into his church life and his work.
I was able to talk more about sexuality from the pulpit. And that's when I did the Bible study series on the Black church and sexuality. This is also at a time when the congregation was embracing an AIDS ministry.
And he's pretty sure that people know he's gay. And even though no one's asking him and he's not telling them, living this secret is weighing on him.
Yeah.
I had already been having conversations with Dr. Vincent Harding, who was my advisor and mentor. He was praying with me. He and a psychologist, Art Jones and Reginald Fletcher, we were meeting and praying. And, they were saying, at some point you're going to have to tell your story, because if you don't, someone will tell it for you.
And that's exactly what happened. Someone told his story for him.
I'm Fonzo.
And I'm Eliza.
And we're the co-host of Grown, a podcast from The Moth that shows we're never fully grown.
Growing up feels like a phase that should end at some point, but does it ever really? Whether you're 16 or 26 or 86, you're gonna have to deal with family drama, your body, and the type of person you want to be. So why not put it all out in the open and go through it together?
Join us every other week to deal with cringe, culture, and the courageous efforts of people like you to get grown.
Start listening today. Follow Grown on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now.
I stood in front of the Capitol in Colorado with then our youth minister, the Reverend Reginald Fletcher. And I stood at the microphone and I was speaking as an advocate for Referendum I, which gave legal protections for same-sex couples. That was in 2000, maybe 2000. I'm not real sure. On the way back from Denver to Colorado Springs, I said to him, wouldn't it be something if someone snapped a picture of us and we ended up on the front page of the paper? And lo and behold, the Denver Post did. And there we were. And I said, well, it won't matter.
Because he was thinking that nobody was going to read it. I mean, who is reading newspapers, number one? So I could see why he would say that. But you know who's going to read all of the newspapers? Those church folk, okay? They read every single last word.
Our deacons did see it. One deacon in particular, and it became a topic at a deacons meeting one Saturday morning. And the question was, Pastor, is this going to become a gay church? And I was gay, so that hurt. I said in that meeting, brothers, I think we need to pray, and we need to have a congregational meeting in 2 weeks, and I'll be able to tell you the direction this church is going to go. 2 weeks later, we had a congregational meeting. That morning, I stayed in bed late because I, was depressed, I guess. Didn't know what I was going to say in this meeting. About 4:30, I just started typing on my computer some notes, and then I arrived at the meeting at 7 o'clock. You set up a meeting on where the church is going to go in terms of gay. Everybody who's been a member of the church in the last 400 years shows up. So the place was just packed with people. They were swinging from the chandeliers. It was just crazy. So I had a packed house to tell them, I am gay. I've always been gay. I've been trying to tell the world all these years I'm gay. And the only thing I regret is that I haven't done it sooner.
So you got to remember, this is his church that he's grown up in. He knows these people very well. There's a reason why he didn't just come back from seminary and dump all that new information on them. So when he comes out, he resigns because he deeply feels like the church is not going to be able to handle that and move forward now that everything's out on the table.
That is so heavy.
People after that came up and greeted me cordially. I thought that was my memory. It may be a little romanticized. We scheduled a meeting 2 weeks later for them to be able to talk to me since I had done all the talking in that meeting. And that was the meeting in which they voted me out. I had hoped that they would, in my resignation, they would allow me to stay. That happened in September, the end of September. And I wanted to stay till the end of the year so that it would be a smooth transition. And that night, it was in October, early October, and they said, no, you got to go. October 31, out. And that's what happened. It was probably the greatest pain, or the most intense pain that I've ever felt, and for such a long time. I mean, for years, I was in pain over that. And just really lost everything.
Reverend Reynolds moved to Denver and tried to adjust to a new life away from the pulpit and outside of the church community that he'd called home for his entire life.
It took me a while to get a rhythm in going back to church, and not the church I had resigned from. But when I would go, I was used to people rallying around and wanting to join and go to lunch with. Even my parents, I would go to lunch with them or whoever. I just can remember being at a church in Denver and leaving and going down the stairs and walking down the sidewalk and thinking to myself, I am so alone. And what I had to do is learn how to do things on Sunday that I enjoy. Go out to eat. I left church and went and had crab. I sat under a tree and ate crab. So I'm always trying to entertain myself. And I've learned how to be alone and be happy and enjoy the company of just myself. I never thought about leaving Christianity, but definitely thought about leaving the church. I thought the church was done with me. I didn't think there was a place for me in the church.
But he was wrong about that.
Thank God.
I had an opportunity to serve as an interim for a church in Oak Park, Illinois. The name of that church is Pilgrim Congregational United Church of Christ. To have a congregation invite me to come, and not just me as a preacher, but to invite my whole self, even the gay part of me, was huge. And so that's when I kind of realized that the church may not be done with me. Unfortunately for me, that congregation was largely white. All right, so I was still dealing with the race issue. And I think I still deal with the race issue and sexuality. Because the white congregations that I have served have allowed me to come in and be open and be gay and celebrate that. And the black congregations just simply do not. The congregation I'm serving now certainly knows that I'm gay, and it is a historic African-American congregation. Is it celebrated? Probably not. But time will tell. I've long stopped trying to plan the direction of my life and go with it, but just always trying to be prepared for the turns, the circuitous journey that my career has taken me. It's been beautiful.
Gosh, that is so powerful and rough, right? Where it feels like he still doesn't have all of the peace to just totally declare who he is and how he is in the world. And that's so common. You find your happiness, but it's a very, I'm going to just find my own happiness. It's not the same as finding happiness in community or being able to just march down the street and wave it proudly.
I feel like that's the gem in his story, is that he doesn't have this, perfect conclusion, vindication, my bad.
That's a word.
He was vindicated.
The vindigays.
I feel like that's real. That's real. And the value in sharing this story for me is that he is still dealing with the complications of being a gay man from his generation, being black, and then wanting to actively preach and work in the church. I think that the part that everybody can take, regardless of what generation you're from or what environment you're in, is that he's finding his happiness within himself. And I think that when you're living an open secret where you feel like you owe it to people to shrink and hide, your value is kind of based on if you're hidden enough for people to be happy with you being there.
Right.
Whereas with him, now it kind of feels a little bit more like, I know who I am. I'm fine with or without you. If you want me to be here, I'll be here. But also, like, we don't have to get into this.
Yeah.
Type thing. And I like that.
Do you feel like people will find their happiness? Do you feel like people will find a place where they can truly feel accepted?
I think some people will, but it's unrealistic to think that everybody will. I think if we accept that it is complicated and that it is okay to be sad about the thing that you lost, and this is the reality of what it means to be us, then it's a little easier. In our conversation with him, he discussed things like finding community in different places, going to brunch and doing this and that. And I think that we need to make sure that we're connected to each other in different ways and on different fronts so that all of our validation and joy isn't wrapped up in a place that does not fully accept us. It makes it a little easier to have that complicated conversation with your mom or like whoever, people that you still love and want to be around and places you still want to serve in, but you're like, don't try me, right? It's a little easier when you have like community elsewhere to like fortify you a little bit.
Somebody's got your back.
Yeah. And you have somewhere to go if you're ever like, you know what? I don't want to do this right now. I'm not fooling with y'all today. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it's real. And I feel like that's what this is about, is like just being real about what happens and where people end up. And I think he ended up in a great place.
Join another group that celebrates you and know that God loves you, and just be true to you. And that's when you'll flourish. That's when you'll be creative. That's when you will become everything that you desire to become. I will say that I will never again allow myself to be in a place where I'm dependent on other people to make me happy. My happiness will come from within, and it's an intentional effort to make that happen.
The Second Sunday podcast is hosted by Esther Ikoro and Darren Calhoun. But podcasting is a team sport, so a big thank you to our dream team.
Our producers, Esther Ikoro, Anna DeShawn, and Nichole Hill. Our associate producer, Amber Walker.
And our managing producers, Jocelyn Gonzales and Courtney Fleurantin.
Our opening theme song is Maya B's original track titled They Don't Know. You should download the full song today. To learn more about today's guests or the show, visit our show notes.
Second Sunday is a production of The Cube in partnership with the PRX Big Questions Project, which is generously supported by the John Templeton Foundation and produced by PRX Productions.
The Cube is your #1 curated platform to discover the best BIPOC and QTPOC podcasts.
Support this show and more like it by joining the Cube app and follow The Cube across social media at the Cube app.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next episode.